The diplomatic lounge of Nexus Station buzzed with worried voices as alien leaders from across the galaxy gathered around polished tables. The air shimmered with different breathing gases, and translation devices hummed softly as species after species shared their concerns about the newest members of the Galactic Consortium. Zeftai stood at the center of the group, his tall crystalline body catching the light like a living prism. Each time he moved, rainbows danced across the walls. His people, the Velthari, were known for their careful thinking and logical minds. Tonight, he looked deeply troubled. "The humans worry me," Zeftai said, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Every report I read makes them sound more dangerous. They live on a world that should kill them, yet they call it home. They swim in waters filled with predators. They climb mountains that reach into space itself." Commander Throck shifted in his specially built chair, designed to support his massive frame. The Korvani warrior's 4 thick arms were crossed over his chest, and his beetle-like eyes reflected the room's soft lights. His people had fought wars across 3 star systems, but even they found humans puzzling. "My intelligence officers tell me humans strap explosives to metal tubes and ride them off their planet," Throck rumbled, his voice deep as rolling thunder. "What kind of species uses controlled explosions for transportation? It makes no sense." A chittering sound came from the corner table where Skexri sat, her insect-like body folded into an elegant pose. The Keptri were master builders, creating structures that lasted for thousands of years. They valued safety and careful planning above all else. "The humans call it exploration," Skexri clicked, her mandibles moving rapidly as she spoke. "But my scouts report they throw themselves from flying machines with only thin fabric to slow their fall. They do this for fun. What rational mind finds terror entertaining?" Other voices joined the conversation. A floating ethereal mentioned humans who swam with massive sea beasts that could swallow them whole. A rock-like granite told stories of humans who entered burning buildings to save others, ignoring their own safety. Each tale painted humans as either completely insane or impossibly brave. "Perhaps they do not understand fear the way we do," suggested an elderly Velthari diplomat, her crystal form dim with age and wisdom. "Or perhaps they understand it too well and choose to face it anyway." The room fell quiet as they considered this. Fear was universal among thinking beings. It kept them alive, made them careful, helped them survive. A species without proper fear should have died out long ago. The lounge's entrance door slid open with a soft chime, and conversation stopped completely. A human woman stepped inside, looking around the room with calm interest. She was smaller than most species present, with dark hair pulled back neatly and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Hannah Kim wore the simple gray uniform of a consortium scientist, with no weapons or protective gear visible. She moved with quiet confidence, neither hurried nor slow, like someone comfortable in her own skin. To the watching aliens, she looked perfectly ordinary and completely harmless. "Excuse me," Hannah said, her voice polite and professional. "I could not help but overhear your conversation. I am Dr. Kim, the new human xenobiologist assigned to the station. I hope you will forgive my interruption, but perhaps I could help address some of your concerns about my species." The alien stared at her in surprise. This small, soft-looking creature seemed nothing like the dangerous beings they had been discussing. Where were the signs of madness? The reckless behavior? She appeared as rational and thoughtful as any scientist they had ever met. Zeftai's crystalline form shifted colors, showing his curiosity and confusion. "Dr. Kim, we were just discussing some of the reports we have received about human behavior. The activities your people engage in seem quite dangerous to our understanding." Hannah smiled warmly, and several aliens noticed how the expression transformed her face from merely pleasant to genuinely kind. "I would be very happy to discuss human psychology with you all. We may not be quite as reckless as we might appear from the outside. Our actions usually have reasons, even if those reasons are not immediately obvious to other species." She gestured toward an empty chair. "May I join you? I find that many misunderstandings between species come from looking at behavior without understanding the thoughts behind it. What seems like madness to one people might be perfectly logical to another." The aliens exchanged glances, their earlier fear beginning to fade. This human seemed reasonable, intelligent, and peaceful. Perhaps all the stories about human instability were exaggerated tales that had grown wilder with each telling. Throck uncrossed one of his massive arms and waved toward the chair. "Please, Doctor, we would welcome your perspective. It is rare to hear directly from a human about human behavior." As Hannah settled into her seat, adjusting her position with the same calm grace she had shown since entering, the assembled diplomats began to relax. Maybe humans were not the dangerous, unpredictable species of reports had described. Maybe they were just another peaceful people trying to find their place in the galaxy. They had no idea how wrong they were about to discover themselves to be. The nebula's edge sat deep in the belly of Nexus Station, where honest traders mixed with smugglers and the air tasted of engine oil and strange spices. The lighting was kept low on purpose, casting long shadows that helped hide faces and secrets. Most nights, the place buzzed with tension as different species eyed each other with suspicion. Tonight was different. At the center table sat Jinwoo Park, a human so large he made even the biggest Corvani look small. His shoulders were wide enough to block out the light, and his hands could have easily crushed steel. Yet those same massive hands moved like a dancer's as he carefully lifted a tiny glass of Altrian nectar to help an elderly Veltheri reach her drink. "There you go, grandmother," Jinwoo said in the universal tongue, his deep voice soft as silk. He used the old word respect that worked across dozens of cultures, making the crystal woman's form glow with pleased surprise. The server said this batch came from homeworlds. It should taste like starlight. The old Veltheri's crystalline fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the glass. "You are very kind, young one. Not many beings show such courtesy to strangers." Jinwoo smiled, the expression transforming his face from intimidating to gentle. "My mother always said kindness costs nothing but means everything. Besides, we are all far from home here." Around his table, a small crowd had gathered. 3 young aliens watched with wide eyes as Jinwoo played three-dimensional chess with a Corvani child barely half his size. The game board floated between them, its pieces moving in complex patterns through the air. The human's enormous fingers moved each piece with surgical care, never rushing, always thinking 3 moves ahead. When the young Corvani made a mistake, Jinwoo did not take advantage. Instead, he paused and pointed to a better option. "See here, little friend," Jinwoo said patiently. "Your warrior wants to protect your home base, but if you move him there, my ship can attack from this side. What if you put him here instead?" The child's 4 eyes brightened with understanding. "Oh, then your ship cannot hurt my base." "Exactly right." Jinwoo laughed, the sound warm and rich. "The best victories come when everyone learns something new." A small ethereal floated nearby, her ghostly form shimmering with curiosity. "Human Jinwoo, why do you let him see your strategy? Most players hide their plans." Jinwoo considered this seriously, as if the child's question deserved his full attention. "In games, winning is less important than growing. If I beat him by keeping secrets, he learns nothing. If I teach him to play better, we both win something valuable." The watching children nodded solemnly, storing this wisdom away. Even the adults in the cantina found themselves listening to the human's gentle words. Behind the curved bar, Scrix cleaned glasses with his 4 arms while keeping his compound eyes on Jinwoo's table. The insectoid had owned the nebula's edge for 3 years, and he had never seen anything like this. Usually, his customers drank alone, watched for trouble, and left quickly. Tonight, beings who normally avoided each other were sharing tables and conversations. A group of Saurian traders who typically scared other customers away sat quietly in their corner booth, actually smiling as they watched Jinwoo teach chess moves to the alien children. 2 rival shipping crews had put aside their usual arguments to debate the best routes through the outer systems, their voices civil and thoughtful. Even the lighting seemed warmer somehow, though Scrix had not changed any settings. The cantina's atmosphere shifted again when Dr. Hannah Kim entered, looking around until she spotted Jinwoo's distinctive bulk. She wore casual clothes now instead of her uniform, and her face lit up with genuine pleasure at seeing her friend. "Sorry I am late," Hannah said, sliding into the booth across from Jinwoo. The Veltheri Council had many questions about human culture. No problem. Jinwoo replied, carefully moving the chess pieces back to their starting positions for another game with the young Corvani. We were just discussing strategy and philosophy. Very educational for all of us. From a nearby table, Zeftai watched this interaction with growing confusion. The crystalline diplomat had followed Dr. Kim here partly from curiosity and partly from lingering concerns about human behavior. What he saw made no sense with the reports he had read. Your friend is quite unusual, Zeftai commented quietly when Hannah noticed him watching. Hannah glanced at Jinwoo, who was now showing Corvani Child how to set up the chessboard properly, his massive hands incredibly patient with the small pieces. Jinwoo hauls cargo between the outer systems. Dangerous work, but he says violence is bad for business. He prefers talking to fighting, because everyone goes home safe and happy. But surely he must encounter pirates, raiders, hostile forces. Zeftai pressed. How does he handle genuine threats? Jinwoo looked up from the chess game, having overheard. Most problems come from fear or misunderstanding. Friend Zeftai, when people feel heard and respected, they rarely choose violence. I have been lucky so far. The Veltheri diplomat studied Jinwoo's calm expression, searching for signs of deception or hidden aggression. He found only peaceful confidence and genuine warmth toward everyone in the cantina. Perhaps humans truly were not the dangerous beings the reports described. The warm, peaceful feeling in the nebula's edge died in an instant. The cantina's entrance door slammed open with a violent crash that made every being inside jump. Heavy boots stomped across the metal floor as 5 figures entered, their weapons gleaming under the dim lights. Captain Vextor led the group, his scale green skin catching the light like old leather. The Saurian pirate stood taller than most humans, with yellow eyes that glowed like hot coals and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. His crew spread out behind him, blocking the exits with practiced ease. "Good evening, my dear friends," Vextor hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the fear in the air. It is that special time of the month again, Protection Fee Collection Day. The cantina's atmosphere changed completely. Beings who had been laughing and talking moments before now pressed themselves against walls or tried to hide behind tables. Even the boldest traders knew better than to challenge Vextor's crew. These pirates had terrorized the station for months, and everyone had heard the stories of what happened to those who refused to pay. Scrix's forearms shook as he cleaned the same glass over and over behind his bar. His compound eyes watched the pirates spread through his establishment like a disease. "Please, Captain Vextor," he clicked nervously, his voice barely above a whisper. "We paid last cycle, just like always. The station security said they would dash. Station security is busy tonight." Vextor cut him off with a laugh that sounded like breaking bones. His claws extended from his fingertips, each one sharp enough to cut through steel. Amazing how these security patrols always seem to have emergencies during collection time. The other patrons knew the truth. Vextor's crew had contacts throughout the station. They always knew when security would be looking the other way. Tonight, the cantina was completely alone with no help coming. Vextor's burning eyes swept the room, looking for anything valuable or interesting. His gaze stopped on a small table in the corner, where So-Young Lee sat alone, quietly eating her dinner. The young human engineer looked tiny compared to the massive aliens around her, with delicate features and gentle hands that showed her work with precision instruments. Well, Vextor purred, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What do we have hiding in the corner?" "A pretty little human female." So-Young froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. She had heard the stories about what Saurian pirates did to their victims. Her dark eyes darted toward the exits, but the pirates blocked every escape route. At the center table, Jinwoo had gone completely still. The chess pieces floated forgotten in the air between him and the young Corvani, who quickly scrambled away to find his parents. The alien children who had been watching the game suddenly sensed danger and scattered like leaves in a storm. Vextor stalked across the cantina floor towards So-Young's table, his crew following with weapons ready. "I have heard many interesting things about human women," he hissed, reaching out with one clawed hand. "Perhaps tonight we can find out if the stories are true." Before So Young could move, Vextor's powerful grip closed around her arm and yanked her to her feet. She gasped in pain as his claws dug through her sleeve, drawing small drops of blood. The sight made several aliens look away in horror. Such soft skin, Vextor laughed, pulling her closer until his hot breath touched her face. So delicate and breakable. I think instead of credits tonight, this little flower will be our payment. The cantina fell into dead silence. Even the air recycling system seemed to hold their breath. Every being in the room knew what was about to happen, and every being knew they were powerless to stop it. Then Jin-Woo spoke. "Let her go." His voice was quiet, barely above a normal speaking tone, but something in those simple words made the entire cantina go silent as space itself. The gentle warmth that usually filled Jin-Woo's voice was completely gone, replaced by something cold and hard as asteroid rock. Vextor turned toward the sound, his yellow eyes finding the massive human still seated at his chess table. For a moment, the pirate captain looked confused, as if he could not believe someone had dared to speak. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a sound like glass breaking against stone. "The cargo hauler wants to play hero tonight." Vextor's grip tightened on So Young's arm, making her wince. "Do you have any idea what I am, little human? I have killed Korvani warriors with my bear claws. I have torn apart Velthari crystal singers and watched their light fade. I have ended creatures twice your size for far less than the insult you just gave me." Jin-Woo rose from his chair with slow, careful movements. Every eye in the cantina watched as he stood to his full height, his broad shoulders blocking out the light. "I asked you nicely," he said, his voice still quiet, but carrying something that made even the pirates shift nervously. "Please let her go." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Something fundamental had changed in Jin-Woo's posture, in the way he held himself, in the very air around him. Vextor's laughter died in his throat as he truly looked at the human for the first time. What happened in the next few seconds would become a legend told throughout Nexus Station for decades. Aliens would speak of it in quiet voices, their eyes wide with remembered shock and disbelief. Jin-Woo moved faster than physics should have allowed for someone his size. One moment he stood at his chess table, calm and still. The next moment his massive fist crashed into Vextor's jaw with the sound of breaking rock. The impact sent the pirate captain flying across the cantina like a broken toy. But this was not the wild fighting of an angry animal. Jin-Woo moved with the precision of a surgeon and the efficiency of a machine built for war. When the nearest pirate swung his weapon, Jin-Woo caught the alien's wrist and twisted with perfect technique. Bone snapped. The weapon clattered to the floor. A broken bottle lay on a nearby table. Jin-Woo snatched it up, but instead of swinging wildly, he drove the sharp glass into exact points on the pirate's arm. The alien's entire limb went dead as nerve clusters shut down. The technique was so precise it seemed impossible that a cargo hauler would know such things. The second pirate charged with a roar of rage, claws extended and teeth bared. Jin-Woo did not meet the attack head-on. Instead, he stepped aside at the last second and used the alien's own momentum against him. His hands guided the charging pirate face first into the cantina wall with bone-crushing force. The impact left cracks in the metal plating. So Young Lee, the small engineer who had seemed so helpless moments before, suddenly revealed why the pirates should have been more careful. As Vextor fell, his grip on her arm loosened just enough. She twisted free with a movement too smooth to be accidental. Then her small fist drove upward into the closest pirate's throat. The blow looked gentle, almost delicate. The pirate dropped like a stone. So Young moved like water, flowing around attacks that should have crushed her. Her hands found pressure points with surgical accuracy, dropping beings twice her size with touches that seemed impossibly light. Every movement was controlled, calculated, perfect. "Behind you!" shouted Minho Choi from across the cantina. The man who had seemed like a quiet accountant just minutes ago suddenly vaulted over a table with athletic grace. He grabbed a metal chair and spun it like a weapon, bringing it down on a pirate's head with devastating force. His movements matched Jin-Woo's perfectly, as if they had fought together 1,000 times before. More humans appeared from around the cantina. Beings who had seemed like peaceful traders and scientists suddenly moved with deadly purpose. A woman who worked in station maintenance produced a plasma cutter from her tool belt and used it to disable 2 pirates at once. A man who sold navigation charts fought with moves that belonged in a military training manual. They moved like a pack of hunters, communicating with quick glances and subtle gestures. When one human engaged an enemy, another would appear to cover their weak spots. When a pirate tried to use a superior reach, a human would slide inside his guard. When strength failed, speed took over. When speed was not enough, perfect technique made the difference. One pirate, seeing his crew being destroyed, tried to run for the exit. Hygiene Nam, a tiny woman who processed shipping manifests for the station, calmly walked to a wall panel and pressed several buttons. Emergency blast doors slammed shut with a sound like thunder. The fleeing pirate bounced off solid metal and fell backward onto the floor. "Sorry," Hygiene said politely to the trapped alien. Safety protocols require lockdown during violent incidents. The entire fight had lasted less than 90 seconds, but it felt like hours to the watching aliens. They had seen trained warriors, experienced fighters, professional soldiers in action before. This was something different. This was coordination so perfect it seemed telepathic, violence so controlled it looked like art, and efficiency so complete it was terrifying. Vextor struggled back to his feet, shaking his head to clear it from Jin Woo's devastating punch. Blood ran from his broken jaw, but his yellow eyes still burned with fury. He reached for the plasma blade on his belt, the weapon humming to life with deadly energy. "You won't die today, human?" Vextor hissed through his damaged mouth. "I will cut you into pieces and feed them to my pets." Jin Woo turned to face the pirate captain. The gentle giant who had been teaching chess to alien children was completely gone. In his place stood something else, something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. Without apparent effort, Jin Woo's hand closed around Vextor's throat. He lifted the massive saurian off the ground with one arm, holding him at eye level like a child's toy. The plasma blade fell from nerveless fingers as Vextor struggled for air. "You threatened my friend," Jin Woo said simply, his voice calm as still water. "That was a mistake." The watching aliens pressed themselves against walls, suddenly understanding that they had never truly seen humans before tonight. These were not the peaceful explorers from the reports. These were not the gentle beings who had seemed so reasonable. These were predators wearing the masks of civilization, and the masks had finally come off. The silence after the fight was so complete that the hum of the station's life support systems sounded loud as thunder. 5 unconscious pirates lay scattered across the cantina floor like broken toys. The air still smelled of violence and fear. Then Jin Woo did something that made every watching alien question everything they thought they knew about the universe. He knelt down beside an elderly Veltheri woman who had been knocked over during the chaos. His voice, which moments before had been cold as deep space, returned to its earlier gentle warmth. "Are you hurt, grandmother?" Jin Woo asked softly, his massive hands careful as he helped the crystal being back to her feet. "Here, let me help you to a chair. Take your time. There is no rush." The old Veltheri's form flickered with confusion and gratitude. The same hands that had just destroyed trained killers now supported her with infinite patience, as if she were made of the most delicate glass. Jin Woo moved to the cantina like a doctor making rounds in a hospital. He checked on every patron who had been caught in the brief explosion of violence, his voice full of genuine concern for their well-being. When he found a young ethereal who had been frightened by the noise, he spoke to her in soothing tones until her ghostly form stopped shaking. "I am very sorry you had to see that," Jin Woo said to a group of alien children who peeked out from behind their parents. "Violence should never happen around youngsters. Are you all okay?" So Young Lee, the small engineer whose deadly skills had shocked everyone, was already kneeling beside a Corvani trader who had a small cut on his arm from flying glass. She opened a medical kit and began treating the wound with the same precise movements she had used to disable pirates. But now those movements were gentle, healing instead of harming. "This might sting a little," she said apologetically as she cleaned the cut, "but it will help prevent infection. You were very brave during all that trouble." The Corvani stared at her in amazement. Minutes ago, he had watched this tiny human drop opponents twice her size with surgical precision. Now she bandaged his minor injury, as if it were the most important thing in the galaxy. Across the cantina, Minho Choi and the other humans were quietly setting overturned tables back in their proper places and sweeping up broken glass. They worked together with the same coordination they had shown in battle, but now it was directed toward cleaning and repair instead of destruction. Jean Woo approached Scrix behind the bar, where the insectoid owner still stood frozen with shock. "I am very sorry about the mess and the damage," Jean Woo said sincerely. "I will pay for everything that was broken, of course. Your cantina should not suffer, because those pirates chose violence." Scrix's compound eyes blinked rapidly as he tried to process what he had witnessed. They were going to... He clicked incoherently. "They were going to hurt innocent people." Jean Woo said simply, "We could not let that happen. But the fault is theirs, not yours. You run a good establishment here, friend Scrix." Dr. Hannah Kim walked slowly toward Zeftai, who stood near the wall like a statue carved from living crystal. The Velthari diplomat's form flickered with rapid color changes that showed his complete mental confusion. His careful, logical mind was struggling to understand what he had just seen. "You wanted to understand human psychology," Hannah said calmly, as if they were still sitting in the diplomatic lounge having polite conversation. "We are not insane, Commander. We are protective." Zeftai's voice came out as barely a whisper. But the violence, the efficiency, the way they moved together like they shared one mind. "I have seen trained military units with less coordination." Hannah nodded, helping Minho stack chairs that had been knocked over during the fight. "We do not seek violence, Zeftai. Most humans will go their entire lives without ever hurting another being. But we evolved as hunters on a world that try to kill us every single day. When someone threatens our pack, our friends, our family, our tribe, we become exactly what survival demands." The Velthari diplomat watched Jean Woo gently lift a young Corvani child who had been playing chess with him before the pirates arrived. The massive human checked the youngster for injuries, then wiped away frightened tears with infinite patience. Those same hands had just lifted a full-grown saurian pirate off the ground by the throat. "The reports about your species," Zeftai said slowly, his crystalline form beginning to glow with understanding. "They were not describing madness at all, were they?" Hannah shook her head. "Humans who jump from flying vehicles are testing their courage and skill. Humans who swim with dangerous sea creatures are proving they can overcome fear. Humans who explore radiation zones are pushing the boundaries of knowledge. Everything that looks insane to other species is actually us practicing for moments like this." Zeftai's form brightened as the truth finally became clear to him. "You are not mad at all. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because you can choose to be gentle. You wear peace like clothing, but underneath you are always ready for war." "We call it being human," Hannah replied quietly. "We prefer peace, Commander. We want friendship and cooperation, and all the good things that come from different species working together. But we are very, very good at war when peace is not an option." Around them, the other aliens of the cantina began to understand the same terrible truth. Humans were not unpredictable or insane. They were perfectly adapted predators who chose kindness over violence every single day. And that choice made them far more frightening than any mindless beast could ever be.